So we'll get into a little bit of the chapter now. We kind of touched base a little bit. We'll get into the rest of the chapter scan. Of course, you know, as I already said, we really don't, unfortunately, have too much to discuss. It was only 7 pages due to Gege's sickness. We did learn a couple different things from this chapter. One, we know that Yuta and Todo are not at all involved in the domain clash. Which means that Yuta decided to once again take the burden on himself completely without letting anyone else interfere or intervene, which, I mean, you could say is a good thing. You could say it's a bad thing. Personally, I don't know how to feel. This does prove that maybe he is completely Gojo and isn't able to recreate the same kind of things that he does in his own domain, where, like, we know in Yuta's own domain, Yuta can pick and choose who the sure hit affects. But, I mean, also at the same time, Yuta has a domain expansion that can completely change the sure hit effect depending on what curse technique he wants to use. So it wouldn't surprise me that if Yuta's domain expansion was a little bit more versatile than Gojo's, who just had that one sure hit of the unlimited void. Like, we'll have to see. We had that whole controversy of Yuta not having Gojo's memories of fighting inside the domain expansion, which is how Sukuna is able to gain a little bit of an advantage inside of the inner domain clash. I've seen a lot of people be very upset about that, to the point that people are being very condescending and using it as an excuse to prove that Gege does not know what he's doing. I mean, I can look at it one of 3 ways, honestly. I mean, there is, of course, a way that Gege just forgot, which is reasonable. Again, we are at the end of the story where Gege needs to cut corners, finish everything, and make sure everything kind of ties neatly together with a little bow. So, in the video that I made for Madara, Aizen, and Sukuna, I realized that a lot of the times there are certain liberties by mangaka taken towards the end, a lot of authors as well, just because, again, they have to go, okay, here's my over-expanding world, now I need to tighten it up, narrow it up, narrow it until we're closed and there's nothing left leaking. Maybe a little things leak here or there because you like to inspire some mystery for the future. Maybe we're gonna have a sequel, but, or like, again, maybe you want to leave the audience on like a question or a cliffhanger at the end of your manga. That's fine. But again, sometimes authors will fudge things just to get the point across that they're trying to get through in their final battles, their finales, their climaxes, and everything. Now, this isn't me excusing authors forgetting stuff. I'm just saying that it happens. I forget stuff writing the videos that I do. It happens. So Gege forgetting is a very valid option. You also want to remember as well, I have seen the argument time and time again, which I think is a pretty valid argument, all things considered, if you want to be a Gege defender, which is that Kenjaku was still having Geto Suguru's memories flowing into him throughout the process. It wasn't something that happened instantaneously. It was something that happened gradually and over time. I also imagine that it's something that you are free to dive into deeper if you want to, or you can completely ignore it going forward. Like, think about it. If you have a body that you take over, let's say Kenjaku took over one of his bodies in the past, and that person has no important memories whatsoever. Now, would it be good to, over time just get slowly acclimated and your body begins to hold the same memories as the previous vessel? Yeah, 110%. But in cases like maybe Kenjaku or Geto, or you want to learn how the curse technique works, maybe you dive deeper into the memory and go, okay, I'm going to look through Geto's memories to kind of sift through and find what I need. Because you have to imagine, if we're getting, memories dumped into us, right? We are now, becoming one and joining brains and memories. If all of those memories hit one person at a single point in time, it's probably not going to go so well. Why? Because we see what happens when you get unlimited void. You know what I mean? When you get struck with unlimited void, it's so much data and information hitting you at once, you're kind of like debilitated, like you're frozen in time. I would imagine, just based off of how we saw memories and 3 years of past floated through Gojo's head in a minute of time, and how Gojo got sealed by Prison Realm. I imagine it's probably somewhat similar to that, where like if all these memories start hitting you all at once, it's probably not a good thing, right? Probably not a good thing at all. However, you also have to imagine that Yuta's on a 5-minute time limit. Yuta got the body and immediately jumped into the fray. Like, he had no time to waste. He needed to teleport. Excuse me, I'm sorry. He needed to teleport into that. Now, it's, again, you could look at it multiple different ways. I mean, there's also the third way, which is just, it's a retcon. You know, Gege just decided to take that out where you don't immediately get the memories. Because frankly, not for nothing, if you were here for the original reaction review, I even questioned why the hell does Kenjaku or whatever need the memories. All you really need to know is to know how to use the curse technique. But I like I said, I personally, if I had to choose anything, I would say just for the sake of making the story make sense, it's not something that happens instantaneously. You don't just immediately gain all of the memories of somebody. I did also see someone make an argument that like, oh, Sukuna was using domain amplification on Gojo outside of domain clashing, so Yuta just forgot that Sukuna could use domain amplification, which I don't believe is the actual problem or what's meant to be interpreted here. I believe what's meant to be interpreted here in this scene is the fact that Yuta did not realize that Sukuna could domain amplification as he was also employing his domain expansion. Because you have to remember, right? Even as far back as in Shibuya incident, when we had Jogo and Hanami use domain amplification against Gojo, Hanami had to completely disable her domain amplification to activate her curse technique and continue fighting Gojo and try and make that awful kill blow that ended up getting Hanami killed. But again, Hanami had to completely deactivate their curse technique. And we even see that Sukuna gives Higuruma massive praise for being able to intermittently use domain amplification while maintaining the access to his curse technique and the Executioner's Blade, right? Like, Sukuna, the whole reason Sukuna even acknowledged Higuruma in the first place was because Higuruma went from Executioner's Sword, domain amplification to Executioner's Sword in one quick motion without canceling his curse technique. So Higuruma was just able to put it on pause really quickly, which again is something that Sukuna did against Gojo, where Sukuna was putting the Maharaga's adaptation on pause while he was using domain amplification. So what does that tell you? That tells you that a curse technique most likely can't be used at the same time as a domain amplification. So again, I'm telling you, if we are following the trend that Yuta did not get all of Sukuna's memories, if we're following the trend that Yuta didn't get all of all of Gojo's memories, then Yuta would have legitimately no idea what happened inside of those domain clashes, which is what Sukuna mentions. Naturally, what occurred within the domain your little crows couldn't even enter wouldn't be known to you all. So only a select few people would know. Now, another interesting thing, again, that I think is very obvious, that shows Yuta's inexperience and Yuta's Captain Ginyu flaw, which is the fact that Yuta just doesn't bring to the table the same level of intensity and strength and just usage of a curse technique that Gojo would, considering it's Gojo's original curse technique. Obviously, Gojo and Yuta did do the soul swap training, which definitely helped. It helped Yuta with his barrier techniques. It helped Yuta be able to use the techniques that he's going to be using against Sukuna. But I see here, this page is one of my favorites. And the reason why I really like this page is because it shows Yuta use blue to try and pull Sukuna in. And what does Sukuna do? Sukuna immediately fucking goes, okay, you want to close the distance? Let's go. And Sukuna gets right up in Yuta's face and grabs Gojo's arm and punches him in the face. Grabs Gojo's arm and punches Yuta in the face. And it proves to you that Yuta isn't able to bring the same level of power that Gojo is, not just based off of the fact that he's just getting used to the body, but based off the fact that Sukuna and Gojo had a full domain clash like 5 to 6 domain clashes, and fought inside each other's domain. Sukuna has basically been shadowboxing Gojo for the longest time. Sukuna already is adapted to fighting Gojo, so this is nothing new to him. That's why when Yuta casts blue, Sukuna immediately gets up in his face and just starts taking advantage of the situation. It's not because Sukuna is just, you know, necessarily stronger than Gojo. It's because he's already seen this before and knows how to react, whereas this is Yuta's first rodeo. This proves the 6 eyes doesn't automatically give you hands. Gojo is just him. 110%. I've said that honestly since Gojo versus Sukuna, and I will honestly stick by that until my dying day. Gojo, let's go back to the color page here. Gojo is the strongest because he's Gojo, not because he was born with the 6 eyes, or he was born with the limitless, or we've given him this pedestal to be put upon, all of this nonsense that you could claim. Gojo is the strongest because he's fucking Himothy incarnate. Gojo put in the work. He learned all these different anti-domain measures. He learned curse energy manipulation, even though the 6 eyes does help in that situation. He learned utmost curse energy manipulation. He learned how to use his technique way better than anyone else in the clan had way before him. And you need look only further than the hidden inventory arc to show that Gojo wasn't born him. Like, Gojo still had to create his own domain expansion. Gojo had to create the auto limitless. Gojo had to create or not create, but Gojo had to improve himself and learn reverse curse technique in order to use red. Like, hidden inventory is the truest sense of the word that Gojo was never born as this awesome maniac of a person. Even at the beginning of hidden inventory, before Gojo goes through his Honored One awakening moment, he was killed. He was beaten. Toji confirms Gojo is the pinnacle of the Jujutsu sorcery world, and sure, he's mollywopping curse users like Q, and the curse users that like are coming after Riko, but up against a real threat like Toji, yikes, not looking good. Now, granted, of course, Gojo does have a massive, power cliff compared to everyone else. Like, even as a young child, he's putting curse users into, shitting in their diapers. Gojo does have a moniker of, nepotism, we'll call it. He was born with 2 of the best things that you possibly could have ever been born with. But if Gojo just relied on the things that he was born with and chose not to grow as a person, and not to grow as a sorcerer into the person that we know as today, we have hidden inventory Gojo that's getting killed by Toji. But the Gojo that's learning, developing, and massively wanting to improve himself and others around him becomes the Honored One that we know today, the unstoppable force that is Gojo Satoru. As far as it goes, the biggest thing that this chapter sets up is it just basically sets up the full-on stakes of the domain expansion. And that's really what it comes down to. We have the most important 3 minutes that any of these characters have had in the longest time. Can Yuta actually make this matter? God, I hope so. Yuta just needs to survive 3 minutes, and Sukuna just needs to break the domain within 3 minutes. If Sukuna breaks the domain, then Sukuna kills everyone with his full power Malevolent Shrine. If Yuta survives the domain, then he can stop Sukuna from using Malevolent Shrine again. So that's pretty much the major stakes of this fight.